We help clients, we look at it through really 3 centers of intelligence that are important in this transformation to really go from being limited to continue growing. And that's a financial intelligence component, a productivity intelligence component, and a leadership intelligence component. So we use Kolbe and the Enneagram here internally and with clients because we believe that understanding yourself and other people, how you're wired from a personality perspective, and Kolbe measures cognitive strengths. It's how you instinctively act or behave. Those are 2 different dimensions of emotional intelligence, understanding yourself and each other. And so it can solve a lot of issues and answer a lot of questions. From a very practical standpoint, Kolbe can help with right person, right seat type of job fit questions. And we run on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. We run our firm on EOS. And so that concept of having clarified roles and responsibilities, and then making sure that the people in those seats are well suited for that role. They understand it, they get it, they want it, they have the capacity to do that job. Kolbe is a great tool to align around those things.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest who is going to bring us into her world, share her story of when she got the call to leadership and what that means to you, your business, your career, and your life. Her name is Courtney DeRonde. Courtney, are you ready for kickoff?
I am ready, Mary Lou. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you about what you're doing in the world because it's really interesting. So team, Courtney, first of all, she's coming to us from Des Moines, Iowa, and she is a CPA and Managing Partner of TDT CPAs and Advisors, which is an award-winning practice. It's a boutique advisory and accounting firm for small businesses and nonprofit organizations. Her focus is to help overwhelmed, successful leaders understand and maximize financial information so they can achieve better results and move their organization to the next level. So if you, team, are a small business owner yourself or know of small business owners, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to what she says today because Courtney has a unique way of looking at the financials of a business and a nonprofit and using them in a way that a lot of business owners don't even think about. She is also a board member of the Iowa chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is also known as EO. And I've had some great conversations with other leaders who've been part of that wonderful organization. And some of the things we're going to talk about today, reaching your growth goals, why you absolutely need to have a budget, and so much more. So Courtney, welcome to the show. And thank you for taking some time to come to PYP.
I'm glad to be here, Mary Lou. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. So would you be so kind as to tell us your story about when you got the call to leadership? What was going on in your life at the time? Were you younger? Was it just recently? Bring us into that amazing story.
Yeah. So I've always been very responsible and mature. So as a kid, that was just how I operated. And so what that translated to was leadership in school through student council and class president. I think it started as early as 5th grade and continued throughout middle school and high school. And then when I started my career in public accounting, coming out of college in my early 20s, I joined the firm as an associate and a young CPA and started doing the work. But those traits of leadership and responsibility were just there. They're an underlying part of who I am. I'm an Enneagram 1. I don't know if Mary Lou, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
I am. I'm a 7.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And so that means I am wired to improve myself and the world around me. That's my personality type, my underlying motivation. And so that began to show up in my work as well. I always had this belief that there's got to be a better way that we could do this. There's got to be more meaning around what we're doing, or a way to be more helpful, make a bigger impact in what we're doing. And so that definitely carried through, like I said, in school and then into early stages of my career. I think where it really started to show up in terms of it being a big part of my job or my role was probably about 10 years into my career as a manager. I began leading and creating another business unit within the firm. And so that opportunity to create something and grow it, including the client base and the systems, the processes, the team, was a tremendous opportunity for me to take those kind of underlying motivations and skills I had acquired and interests I had, and really start putting them into practice. So I would say that is really what started, when I was a manager, and also it happened to be around the same time that I had my first child. So it was probably 6 years in, I guess. And so that was an interesting dynamic as well, being a new mom with a growing family, and also stepping into way more leadership at work.
Yes, it's interesting how becoming a parent and leadership kind of go hand in hand, because suddenly you have a human that you are 100% responsible for, at least in their early years, right? Until they become independent. Sometimes they don't, as we sometimes see on the news. But so you discovered this, you discovered your love of small business and how all the different parts work together. Talk to us about, from your vantage point, in a way you are a coach of small businesses and nonprofits, what do you see? What's the number one mistake many small businesses continue to make today?
Yeah, I think that as businesses grow, they don't have the teams and the systems that they need to get to the next level. And so they end up feeling overwhelmed and limited. And so not recognizing that what got you here isn't going to get you there is normal and acceptable. Like, you feel like, I think a lot of times people feel like they've done something wrong because it's not working anymore. And they either get into this hamster wheel of hustle and work to try to overcome it and get burnout and overwhelmed, or they kind of give up and settle for what they've got and really lose out on the opportunity to really fulfill a greater purpose or potential that they have to make an impact.
Yeah. And your role is to show them what bringing a team on can do, what implementing different systems can do. That word systems gets tossed around a lot. And I know from many conversations here at PYP, and also just being out and about in the world, that word can trigger people in a really negative way because it's technology. That's what they immediately think. What are a couple of systems that you point small businesses to typically? You don't have to necessarily name a brand, but just in general, when you see them implement one or both of these systems, they suddenly are no longer in that place of, hey, this isn't working, but like, wow, we're growing again.
Yeah, it can be something as simple as writing down your processes and making sure that everyone is following them. It doesn't even have to be implementing a software system. So we work with growing businesses that have already made it past startup, and they're growing and they're trying to keep, getting to the next level. And so what that means is a lot of the processes, a lot of the way things work is in the business owner's head, or the key couple of people, contractors and employees that they have. And so one of the things we work with them on first is capturing those processes, documenting them, and then leveraging other people, more employees, more outsourced, resources to start taking those things off their plate and doing them. And a lot of entrepreneurs are visionaries, and documenting processes sounds like drudgery, right? And we get that. And we have in our team, we have a lot of people with the high systematized MO of Kolbe, they're high on follow through. And so they are wired to create systems. And so we leverage those skill sets to work alongside business owners and teams to capture what they're doing and put it into documented processes that can be then scaled outside of the business owner or key people who've been doing those. So that's an example of, it doesn't have to mean software. It can just be documented processes followed by everyone.
Yeah. Interesting that you brought up Kolbe and you brought up the Enneagram, these tools that have been developed to help us understand ourselves better, to help us understand the people we work with better. And the Kolbe, I'm a quick start. And that is, I'm actually, if you look at the different combinations, I am an entrepreneur, and the people that can do that high level of follow through, I just bow down to them because it's so not like my natural instinct to go there. What would you say percentage wise, you probably work, most people that you come in contact with are the visionaries, are the founders, or the people that came up with the idea and then the business started to grow. And now they're faced with this transition as a leader themselves of, oh, I'm no longer the person doing it all. Now I have to delegate. Now I have to step back and say, this is actually a business that is growing. It's not those early days where we didn't know where it was headed. Do you use those kinds of tools with your clients to help them understand how to bring on a better team, how to increase employee engagement and the like?
Yes, we do. Because we, like I mentioned, we work with growing businesses, and your question around is it primarily the business owner and entrepreneur? It is, at least initially. And it's usually in the stage where they're going through that transformation from being the owner and the entrepreneur to being the leader of people and business units. And those are different jobs,
Yes, they are.
And so
very different.
We help clients. We look at it through really 3 centers of intelligence that are important in this transformation to really go from being limited to continue growing. And that's a financial intelligence component, a productivity intelligence component, and the leadership intelligence component. So we use Kolbe and the Enneagram here internally and with clients because we believe that understanding yourself and other people, how you're wired from a personality perspective, and Kolbe measures cognitive strengths. It's how you instinctively act or behave. Those are 2 different dimensions of emotional intelligence, understanding yourself and each other. And so it can solve a lot of issues and answer a lot of questions. From a very practical standpoint, Kolbe can help with right person, right seat type of job fit questions.
Yes.
And we run on EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. We run our firm on EOS. And so that concept of having clarified roles and responsibilities, and then making sure that the people in those seats are well suited for that role, they understand it, they get it, they want it, they have the capacity to do that job. Kolbe is a great tool to align around those things. And so, yes, we do. We use those internally for ourselves. It's been a huge part of my leadership here at the firm and our growth. And then we, as with a lot of things, the more we learn about those things and see an impact on us, we start rolling them out to our clients because they want to know, well, how are you doing this? What are you doing? And so that we pass those tools along to them as well.
So talk more about how the insights you've gained from some of these these assessment tools. And what I love about Kolbe, I'm going to reiterate what you just said, is the conative side. I had never experienced, an assessment where it affirmed for me my wiring. And I think that's the key word that you used. It's how we're wired. And is it possible to change our paradigms? Yes. But the wiring, I just fundamentally believe, having lived as long as I have and working with as many people, just like yourself, that people are wired for different things. And that's a great thing. And as a business owner, knowing how, if you've got a room full of everybody who's wired the exact same way, you have a problem. You've got to have that mix of those who can see the big picture and those who are super focused on details. The extroverts who love to work the room, and the introverts who can go hide in a back room and come up with some amazing products or code, or even the systems and processes you were talking about, here's how we operate around here, because they want to be alone and do that kind of work. When you discovered some insights about yourself through, say, the Enneagram and the Kolbe, how did that change your approach to leading in your advisory? Do you remember having any kind of aha moment and going, wow, I can do this like this now?
Yes. So when it comes to Enneagram, the personality typing, the improver, kind of the superpower of being very conscientious, very responsible, very improver focused. I'm a learner. I like to improve things and make them better. The shadow side of that is I can be very critical and judgmental. That's how it's perceived. I think it's helpful. But most people hear that and they think that I'm being critical or judgmental. And so that was an absolute aha for me. And this is hugely effective learning in personal relationships. I remember my husband used to always say, nothing is ever good enough for you. And I'm like, that's not true. And now I'm like, oh, yes, you're right. That's like how I instinctively think, is this could be better. This could be better. And Enneagram ones, we see the gaps, we see the errors, we see what's missing that's what we're drawn to before we see all the good. And so that for me was a huge aha of how that can be a superpower and a gift. And it can also be a tremendous issue in leadership if people think that you are constantly being critical and judgmental and nothing is ever good enough. So that was one of the first things I can remember of being like, oh, shoot. Okay.
That is beautiful, beautiful insight. And I'm a big proponent of these assessments, whether you do them yourself, you just go to a site and fill it out by exchanging your email or whatnot, or formally going through the process because of where you work, or you seek out a facilitator who can actually, administer the particular assessment, because a lot of these do require certification. I know with like Daring Greatly, Brene Brown has a whole certification, and then Marcus Buckingham with the Strengths Finders, Kolbe certainly does, and the Enneagram as well, because they're complicated. It's not just something that you go, it's not one of these fun Cosmo quizzes. As great as those are for a girls' night out or, a slumber party, the tools that you're talking about, Courtney, really can make a difference between, staying where you are as a leader and then going to your next level, which is something that I can tell you're very committed to, not just for your clients, but also for yourself, which, that is the mark of a great leader.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Another mark of a great leader is someone who can recognize when they've really made a mistake. And one of my questions has to do with telling us a story about a time when you found yourself playing out of position, when things did not go according to plan. You threw that game losing interception, or you fumbled the ball and, turned it over to the opposing team, and all that stuff that can go wrong despite having all your X's and O's lined up brilliantly. Tell us the story about when this happened to you and how did you recover?
Yeah, so this happened to me, it's about a year and a half ago, early in my role as managing partner of the firm. So I've been a partner here for several years, became managing partner late in 2020. And one of the first things that I was tasked with from our executive committee was presenting a plan to our partner group with 8 partners here, presenting a plan to the partner group. And so we had done all of this modeling and information gathering and prepared, all of these facts and data and presented it to the partner group. And it was a total flop. And it ended in lots of hurt feelings and misconstrued, intentions and motivations around it. And so the mistake I made was focusing only on the facts and the data and not the emotions and the feelings of the actual people that I'm talking to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that was a huge lesson for me, was that preparation for change or initiatives that you're trying to launch or, whatever it is, if you're leading the charge on something, having just the data and the facts isn't enough unless there aren't any people involved. If there's no people involved, that's probably fine. But when does that ever happen? And so that was a huge lesson for me. And initially when that happened, I was just completely caught off guard and so disappointed and upset. And it really made me question, is this even the job for me? Like, I'm a terrible leader. Why? I shouldn't be doing this job. I don't even know why I would want to do this job. This is hard and this sucks. And so it created a ton of doubt for me. But thankfully, I have a really amazing executive coach who helped me understand the gift of the learning through that and how I can go forward. But it's still, it's only about 18 months ago. So that one's a fresh one, still makes me cringe a bit.
Sure. How did you know? What was the sign when you used the word flop, which, is a very intentional word for people listening who might not have the same level of self-awareness? What clued you into recognizing, oh boy, I missed a whole segment of this presentation?
Yeah, I think the reactions from my fellow partners, the words that they used, the expressions on their faces, I could just see like this was not received at all in the spirit in which I intended it to be. So there's something missing in this communication. And back to Colby, I know all my partners and a lot of our firm are high fact find, which you would hope and expect for the type of work that we do. And so that's what I was thinking, was they're high fact find. They need data and facts. And that's absolutely true for my group, but that's not all that is needed in preparation for that. So yeah, I could tell by their responses, by the looks on their faces. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good lesson for all of us who present information to, first of all, I want to acknowledge that you were thinking about who your audience was. So it wasn't like you just, willy-nilly threw this together. And you really thought about, oh yeah, these guys are mostly fact finders. And therefore I must, almost double down on the facts. And it's easy, I think, for all of us to fall into some kind of, we get some form of blinders on and overlook a key segment. That's human, right? That's human. And we learn best when we fail.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. I tell my kids that all the time. If everything went perfectly, we wouldn't learn nearly as much.
No, we would not. We would not. And so thank you for sharing that story. I can tell it's still a little bit raw. And those are the things we do remember and we grow from sometimes the most. And it sounds like, you'll never make a presentation again where you exclude the emotion.
Right. Yeah. Just managing the emotions and recognizing and I know they're Enneagrams. So not only do I know they're Colby's, I know they're Enneagrams. And it's not to manipulate in any way. It's just to be aware and to help manage and deal with the way that each person responds to things.
Exactly.
To keep moving forward. Yep.
Right. To keep moving forward. And, again, as a leader, we're never going to please everybody and touch everybody at every level. However, I think exceptional leaders come pretty close because they do understand, and it takes time. It takes having an experience like the one you had. It takes investing in learning about yourself and other people and recognizing that none of this is about you, right? I don't mean you personally, Courtney. I mean the royal you, right? Like when I walk into a room, it is not about me at all. I'm just, a conduit, just like you are. You are just a conduit to express some very important information, and how that comes out, that's where it becomes more of a finesse. And again, as leaders, that's how we grow best. And as you look into your crystal ball, speaking of growth, we're coming out of a strange time. The last 2 years with COVID and a huge shift to people working remotely who could. Certainly, there's a large percentage of the population that cannot work remotely. Their physical presence is required for their job. But with the range of small businesses and nonprofits that you work with, what do you see in the next, say, 3 to 5 years is going to have the greatest impact on how people do run their businesses?
Yeah, I think that going forward from here, based on where we're at now and what we're seeing, going forward, I think it's going to continue to be a focus on looking at your team and your people as people with multiple domains of their life that are impacted outside of your business or organization in ways that you don't even know or understand. And if you don't realize that and start to create ways that your business can support them in more than just their work life, they will go find somewhere else as an escape because they'll think that their job is one thing they can control, that they can switch. So I probably didn't say that very concisely, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, there's been so much uncertainty and stress over the last few years, and people are showing up at work with all of this additional stress and uncertainty, and it might be a health problem. It might be that their kids are, remote or, from school or, whatever. It might not be anything to do with the job that you employ them to do.
Yes.
But it still shows up at the job that you employ them to do. And it's a lot easier to change your job thinking you're going to find relief than it is to change some of the other situations in the domains of your life. So that's a big focus that we've had, is helping our team with resources and training and tools that help them in all domains of their life, because we know they're all interrelated. And so that's something I think we're going to see more and more of. It doesn't have to be, through the just, there's so much more mental health issues. I think that's certainly true, but it's even just well-being, even if it's not a diagnosed anxiety, there's still just a lot of uncertainty and stress, more so than what we had, I think, pre-pandemic.
Well said. And thank you for acknowledging that, all of us are complete humans, not just a worker. And that transition, we're in it. We're in it now. There's signs, more conversations around the fact that, we don't just shut ourselves the rest of our lives off the minute we walk through the door, whether it's a literal door in an office or, logging on to Zoom. Those pieces are always there. So great tip. Thank you for sharing that. And now I'd like you to share with us, we're at the part of the show I call Touchdown, Courtney. So I'm putting you in the red zone with less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points, which means it's now or never for you and your team to get that ball into the end zone. So tell us a story about when that happened, when you were part of getting that ball into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, so at the end of 2018, we were coming to the end of a 5-year vision for our firm, and we needed to create a new vision for the firm. And so I was on our executive team at that time, and we were working through that. And that's when I discovered EOS, Traction, the book by Gino Wickman and the EOS system. And we implemented Traction. We hired an implementer and implemented Traction. And that was the pivotal moment in our firm's growth. It gave us so much clarity around who we are and how we help, and clarity around the vision of where we're headed and all the other aspects of EOS. And I think that, looking back on the last few years was truly a touchdown. Like, we could have gone through, a similar visioning process than we had gone through before and just, kind of perpetuated status quo. But instead, we decided to invest in a system that would give us the structure we needed for accountability and growth. And it required a lot of change and a lot of leadership, but that has definitely been a tremendous game-winning touchdown for us as a firm, helping us to remain relevant to our clients, going into the future. We have 71 employees as of right now.
How many are at your firm? Okay. Yeah, because I referenced, your firm is a boutique advisory and accounting firm. And so I was curious what kind of numbers we were looking at. And then for listeners who aren't familiar with the EOS system, can you, in a nutshell, let them know what this can do for a company?
Yeah. So EOS is a system for helping you grow your business and create alignment with your team. So there's 6 components of EOS, but they're about your people, your vision, your processes, your data, your scorecard, and your communication rhythm. So, and meeting rhythm. So it's really just all about gaining alignment about who you are and where you're going, and then creating a structure for setting out goals, annual goals, quarterly goals to achieve your vision, and then a weekly meeting cadence that holds people accountable to what they've committed to and keeps you solving issues towards those quarterly goals, which EOS calls rocks. But yeah, that's, I'd say, kind of in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you for that. Because I've heard of EOS before, but I don't think I've ever had anybody describe some of the elements of it. And it sounds like it was game changing for,
it absolutely was.
Yeah. So it's worth knowing about. And then the book you mentioned is called Traction, or is it EOS Traction?
It's called Traction by Gino Wickman. Yep. And that is, so if you're a DIYer or you just want to understand more about this before you consider hiring an implementer, you can read Traction, and that explains the whole EOS system, those 6 components of EOS.
Great. Yeah. I like that you walk your talk. You're working with businesses who are facing what your advisory firm faced. And so you can speak very clearly to, listen, this is going to be a change and you're going to have to adjust no matter what they decide to do, right? They could take on a big, complete system-wide transformation, or it could be small, like you described earlier, where just let's write down your SOPs. What are your SOPs around here? Or have you actually developed a culture statement, for, I think it's Seth Godin that says culture is, can be summed up, people like us do things like this. I mean, that's basically what culture is in a company. And I've always liked that very simple and elegant way of thinking about whether you're a business of, a couple, or you're growing like you with 71 and more coming, I'm sure. You're huge, like an Apple or a Google. Every place has that culture where, if I'm a part of this organization, people like us do things like this around here. And boy, that can save a lot of heartache by being clear about those things. And for people who'd like to know more about you, Courtney, and the services you offer, where do you hang out online?
Yes. So we are at TDTPC.com. And we also have a landing page set up for your listeners. So if they go to TDTPC.com/PYP, then there's some easy links there to learn more about how we work with small businesses, specifically around starting with optimizing their processes, people, and systems. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I post a video every week, just a short video sharing something that I'm learning as a leader. And so I'm on LinkedIn at Courtney DeRonde.
Great. And team, links to connect with Courtney on LinkedIn to get her amazing resource. There'll be links to the books that she's talked about, including Traction, at pyppodcast.com on her show notes page. And speaking of that, as we wrap things up today, what are a couple of books besides Traction, Courtney, that have been go-tos for you? Or, some people have a book that they refer to, every week. Some people discover a brand new book and it absolutely changes the trajectory of their leadership practice or their business or their career. What could you share with us that have made a difference to you?
Yeah. So in addition to Traction, I would say The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron, which is about the Enneagram. It's a wonderful introduction to the Enneagram and understanding your own personality and the personalities of those you work with or live with or are in a relationship with. So I think that's been a huge impact on me. And then another one is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And that's about really marketing and messaging through the framework of story, and understanding that even through any communication, you should position yourself as the guide and whoever it is you're talking to, your client, your prospect, your team member, as the hero, and be able to clearly communicate that you understand the problem they have and that you are capable of guiding them to a solution. And so those two books, along with Traction, I read them all around the same time. It was all around the same time we implemented EOS. And so that kind of all swirled together and just all was tremendously valuable. And I still reference all of those and pass them around to other people today.
Yes, I have not heard of The Road Back to You, so that's great. Building a Story Brand, fabulous resource. I will second and third and fourth what you just said. And then Traction is new to me as well, and probably to Team PYP, but you never know. And then I'm going to just dovetail, also reiterate, team, for you, the assessments that Courtney shared today, the Enneagram, the Kolbe, both are, if you Google them, and I'll put links to them also, you can learn more about why you might want to find out what your number is in the Enneagram. And also, I can't remember the language around Kolbe. Help me out, Courtney. What do they call? Like, I'm a quick start. What are you?
Yeah, so it's your Kolbe MO. It's like your modus
MO,
operandi.
right?
Yep. So it's your Kolbe MO. So yeah, so I'm quick start as well, and so that's based on which one you score highest in, and I'm tied in quick start and fact find, and So I am also the kind of quintessential entrepreneur MO, which is very unusual for my industry and for my firm. And so for me, understanding that I don't I think as business owners, we always think like, why don't our people think like owners? Like, why doesn't anybody else care about this business as much as I do. And it's like, we're the ones that are wired differently. And so that was very helpful for me to understand. And there's some very practical things about how you interact with people and manage through that. And one thing I would just add quickly as a very practical tip that I have found helpful, whether it's these books or these assessments, what has been really effective for me is really getting a solid understanding of them for myself first, and then cascading it to my leadership team, and then on to the broader team. So that by the time the broader team gets it, me and my leadership team are already well-versed, and I especially totally get it and have seen the value in it. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to get kind of shiny object syndrome and can be excited about something. And then we share it with our whole team. And then they kind of get this feeling of like, oh, this is just another flavor of the month. So I try to make sure it's something that I can really execute on and see benefit from in my own life before I cascade it on. And I think it just builds more credibility and kind of stickiness around those types of ideas and tools.
Fantastic. Love that you wrap things up today with that tip. And I want to thank you again, Courtney, for coming on the Play Your Position podcast, sharing your leadership journey and all the other insights about how people can get more out of their businesses, their careers, their personal lives through reading, through assessment, through just knowing who you are. You really are showing up and playing your position brilliantly. And I want to just wish you all the best as you continue your journey.
Thank you so much, Mary Lou. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.